Pokemon spin-off games. That's it. That's the video. So we can all agree that Pokemon has been falling off recently, right? I mean, is it still selling well? Yes. Do I still spend my hard-earned money on their games and merch? Yes. Has pretty much every generation had its haters and controversy? Yeah, but you gotta admit, repeating the same formula over and over and over and over, you get the point. It's tiring. However, there is always a shimmering light, something that holds you close at night and keeps you warm. The spin-off games. There is a lot you can do with the Pokemon IP. I mean, there's literally over 1,000 unique characters that you can take and do something with. The world of Pokemon is barely explored in the mainline series, beyond just trainer battles and the Pokédex and some lore here and there. So the spin-off games have a unique opportunity to really expand the world of Pokemon, and this made me think, are the mainline games really that important in the big year of 2025? Think about it. I've heard more buzz about the Legends series than I did about either Scarlet Violet or Sword and Shield. Those games just have no sauce. Maybe that's because Game Freak set Sword and Shield in the UK, and the Brits think the best sauce you can put on a piece of bread is beads, but I digress. What I'm saying is, the mainline games aren't what they used to be, and it's probably due to current gaming trends, but honestly, I don't think the mainline games ever really mattered. Even the first one, I feel like people remember the anime a lot more than Red and Blue, at least culturally speaking. The mainline games have always acted as like a sacrificial cow to be suckled on by things like the anime, the card game, merch, and yes, the spin-off games, I'll get to that. So the calves gain nourishment from the mother cow known as the mainline games so they can grow up and be some good-ass hamburgers. And tell me, what would you prefer, some Wagyu beef or sucking on an udder? I'm sure you all said the former, but if you went with the latter, that's a fucked up world to live in. Imagine going to Five Guys. They have an open kitchen. That would be insane. To prove how much more important the spin-off games are to the success of the franchise, we're gonna make a tier list because, you know, it's YouTube. Here we will see if the better the spin-off games, the better the generation. I mean, I hate to say it, but Coliseum really does capture the third generation the same way Pokemon Sleep captures Gen 9. So we're gonna go generation by generation, playing each Pokemon spin-off game and give them a rating. These ratings will be based off of three things: my personal opinion, how I think it holds up compared to the mainline counterpart, and I think the most important thing, how do these games impact the world of Pokemon as we know it? After that, we'll take the average and rate the generation and see how that compares to public opinion to see, you know, if my theory is true. So let's kick off this series with the first generation and go back in time to...
Pokemon means pocket monster.
Pokemon is an undeniable obsession with children across the country.
Some grow and evolve into even more powerful creatures.
And it stands for what? Male fertility.
That teaches children how to enter into the world of witchcraft and the dark realm. Carry these monsters in their pocket. Satan takes it quite seriously. Why?
It means hail Satan.
Pokemon world is a world of the demonic, of the satanic.
Pokemon cards are responsible for fistfights.
Stabbed by other children over Pokemon cards. Gangs on the streets, and they're so used to killing each other, and they're...
She's got short shorts on. She's headstrong and stubborn, constantly arguing with Ash. Typical woman.
And they pump some friend full of bullets.
All-seeing eye.
Some of you can't go to heaven. Why?
Remember that the whole goal in all of these role-playing games, and especially in Pokemon, is to become the master.
Yeah, they just don't make cultural phenomenons like that anymore. Gen Alpha just got like, what, Hawktua or some shit? Now, I was born in 1 NE, that's 1 year after 9/11, but from how I've heard people describe that time, I'm sure that clip show I put together is pretty accurate. And I think it also captures the madness of Pokemon in a way that even Nintendo didn't prepare for. The spin-off games this generation were definitely just shooting from the hip, trying to expand the world of Pokemon and build off of every single pillar that they were building for the series at this time. This generation has a game for anime fans, general fans of the Pokemon themselves, even the trading card fans get a nod this generation. But the best way to capture the thought process behind making these games and how it will definitely shape my opinions going forward is with one simple sentence. Holy fuck, get this game out now! We need money! If a single kid thinks about Digimon once, we shut the whole company down. Yes, that is the theme behind today's episode, and this generation as a whole. The fuck it, we ball mentality. But I can't think of a better way to begin the journey of Pokemon's takeover in the world of video games, but with... Huh, okay, fuck it. Yeah, let's play some pinball. God, we have come a long way with video games. Sometimes you just need that reminder, but pinball? I mean, nowadays I only see pinball machines in bars or practically destroyed anywhere else, but I guess back then pinball fucked. Like, hard. Still, I think it's weird that the first spin-off game to come out of this franchise is a pinball one. Let's be honest, this just fits in with the general theme of this generation. I'm sure someone at Nintendo was just like, hey, Pokeball? Pinball? And then they sent that off to the guys who do Picross and started working on Mario Party or some shit. But let's talk about the game, because honestly, they integrated Pokemon tropes pretty well into pinball. Just like the mainline games, you have the choice between the red board or the blue board. Unlike the mainline games, you don't have to spend twice the money to do both, and they are actually substantially different from each other. For the majority of the time playing, I stuck to the blue board as I found the red's layout to be too difficult to get anything done, but it probably has less to do with the board and more to do with the controls. Now, this could be because I'm emulating this on a PC. Nintendo, please don't sue me, I'm sorry. This is the only game I'm doing this for, I promise. But hitting the ball has the same feeling as thinking you have one more step down the ladder, but you're already on the ground. It's just really hard to aim and get a feel for how far the ball will go, causing a lot of nothing to happen before I run out of balls. Also, the load screen that happens every time the board goes from the two halves of each board is pretty annoying, but that could just be my future man brain talking. Enough about the controls though, who cares about that? I'll just slap a rumble pack onto my keyboard next time. No, I need to answer what you all have been asking. What makes this a Pokemon game? You know, besides the visuals. With pinball, the goal is to just get the highest score you can, and while Pokemon doesn't change that much, because I mean, it's pinball, not trying to move the needle here, you can't really do much with it, you know, before a new Pinball Souls-like gets announced. But how you really rack up points in this game is actually kind of fun. So when you start a new game, you are put into a random area seated in the middle of the board. This just decides what pool of Pokemon are available to you when you play, basically imitating different routes or areas from the main games. On the right side of the board are 3 arrows, and when you hit the ball through them and go all the way around the board, one lights up. Once you get enough to spell out get and hit a certain Pokemon on the board, you activate catch mode, where a random Pokemon appears in the middle of the board and you have to hit it enough times without losing the ball or within 2 minutes in order to catch it. If the Pokemon you just caught can evolve, you now have access to evolution mode, which is just the same thing, but on the opposite side of the board. You can also trigger map mode, where you have a time limit to hit certain parts of the board in order to move to a new area where different Pokemon reside. But that's pretty much it. You can also go to bonus stages after catching and evolving enough Pokemon in a run, but I only ended up getting the Meowth stage, so here's footage of that, I guess. They're ultimately just different minigames that can rack up some serious numbers, but a change up in gameplay is always nice. So now it's time for our first official vibe of this video. What is my personal opinion of Pokemon Pinball? I guess it's cool, for the time at least. It's pretty solid. I mean, if I were a kid in the 90s, I'd probably warn people about 9/11, but I'm hypothetically 10 in this situation. I don't think anyone would listen to me about Al-Qaeda or oil wars, so I guess I just enjoy Pokemon Pinball. But yeah, it's a fun and interesting pinball game, though I definitely prefer IRL pinball over video game versions, and this one kind of fails to hold my attention past the 1 hour mark of playing. For what it is, not bad. It's just very middle of the road for me, and I personally know they can do better, so we're gonna just start off in the C tier for this. So, how does this game compare to Red and Blue? I'm gonna be honest, have you played the OG games within the last, decade? They're ass, and I'm pretty sure back then even Game Freak knew they were ass, as they released multiple updated versions of it before making a new one. And even then, the new one is kind of an updated version of the original one. If someone suggested you played Pokemon Red and the word fire was it in the middle there, go ahead and light them on fire, as they're actively sucking oxygen out of your brain. With all that being said, however, at least they're a more full experience than Pokemon Pinball, I guess. So I'd definitely say Pinball doesn't hold up comparatively, bringing its rating down. Now let's look at how this game expands the world of Pokemon. Please, look long and hard for me, because I can't find it. Realistically, this is just an easy game to pump out in order to keep the rabid 10-year-olds at bay. There's no real reason to have a Pokemon-specific pinball game. Any franchise would have sufficed, but they kind of make any IP into a pinball machine, so whatever. The Pokemon mechanics are actually pretty interesting. I like that this game has a Pokédex that keeps track of the Pokemon you have caught, which really plays into probably the main selling point of Gen 1, the gotta catch 'em all slogan that was so popular, which has now become so unappealing as of late as we enter the thousands of Pokemon. This game also makes me want the mainline games to come up with new ways to catch Pokemon, as the current way is kind of boring. What's wrong with throwing in some mini games or challenges? Hitting the paralyze and pray technique gets tiring after a few decades. It's a neat game, but realistically, it's not doing much for Pokemon besides just being a placeholder game. Also, no one really talks about this game, and Nintendo has left it off of their Switch Game Boy emulator, so no one really cares enough to like or remember this game bringing its rating down even more. Yikers. D tier. Not a great start for Gen 1, but I'm sure the Gen 1ers out there weren't placing any bets on this game for the tier list. No, for that, we're going to look at the universally loved Pokemon on-rail shooter. Wow, a game about obsessively stalking someone because feet pics are just not enough, and now you need full body shots. Bro just getting ass pics of Mew. Oh, and some feet pics. And a little tail pic too, okay. Okay, maybe that was too much, but can you blame me? What can I say about this game that hasn't already been sent to death? This is definitely one of the more popular spin-off games of the franchise's history. I mean, this 2-hour-long game had a dedicated enough fan base for it to get a sequel 2 decades later. I'm actually surprised it took that long too, considering every console generation would have an army of people begging for a new one. But that's all future talk. We're still here in the 90s, baby. Let's get into it. So you play as the totally tubular Todd Snap. Sorry, that was my 90s impression, which is just a stand-in character, but he's also an anime original character, which I think is pretty neat. It just shows how prominent the anime was to the success of the series in the beginnings. The main story behind the game is simple. You're a photographer who almost got a good picture of Mew and is now being scouted into Professor Oak's ever-growing free child labor ring. Man, at some point, Todd and Red really need to get together and seriously get a union going. There's some shady shit going on here. So you basically spend the game on a cart, constantly moving forward through Pokemon habitats, taking pictures of different ones along the way. Hence the on-rail shooter tag people tend to give this game. After you've gone through an area, you can choose one picture of each Pokemon you captured, and then Oak rates them. Now, these ratings can feel a little arbitrary at times. It can be hard to tell what really gets him going. I guess it just depends on what freak level he's on, and look, I get it. Rating Pokemon media can be a rough, thankless job that does require a little freak to get through. This game also has a Pokédex that keeps track of the highest rated image that you've taken of each Pokemon, making it more of a scrapbook than a Pokédex, if we're being honest. But as you reach certain point amounts, you unlock new areas as well as new items to use. For example, you can get some Pokemon food, which can be used to lure this Pikachu to a surfboard. Whoa, radical! Or you can hit this Charmeleon into a vat of lava, burning it alive and evolving it into a Charizard. Okay, that's a little gnarly. You can even hit this Electrode, causing his defense mechanism to go off, forcing him to commit suicide in hopes of taking out the intruder so his husband and kids have time to escape, committing the ultimate sacrifice for the safety of his loved ones. Oh look! A new area opened up! One of the key features people love about this game is the little experimentation you can do to find new and interesting things. However, maybe it's my future man brain talking, but a lot of the secrets don't feel that secretive. I mean, I'd say they flat out tell you about them. I mean, there's a reason an Electabuzz blows up an Electrode at the beginning of this level. I'm sure there's some neat ones that I missed that a lot of people have already littered the comment section with, but I digress. After going through 6 stages and acquiring a Pokeball filled with poisonous gas? Seriously, what the fuck is Oak doing giving that to a kid to throw out wild animals? Someone needs to investigate him, okay? He's like the Diddy of the Pokemon world. Hey kids, I can make you a Pokemon champion! That was stupid. I don't even know if I could do the voice. The final challenge is finding the secret Pokemon at each level. Then you unlock Rainbow Road, the home of Mew, I guess. I don't know. None of it makes sense. They don't really explain anything in this game. I mean, why was Mew in a random bush at the start in the first place? Who cares though? It's finally time to capture all of Mew. So you huck the aforementioned poison balls at Mew so it will reveal itself. I guess that's like Oak's MO. Ladies, you better be prepared to dodge Pokeballs if you ever find yourself at the same party as him. After you get enough pictures for Oak to add to his Goon collection, the game ends. You can go back and try to get higher scores for any Pokemon you might have missed, but that's all there is to it. It's just a 2-hour calming game. So I guess it's time to get my freak on and rate this game. Personally, I actually like short curated experiences, but you can tell they wanted to do more with this game and they were on that get this game out mentality. And around the time I was looking for the secret Pokemon, I was checked out. Doing the same 6 levels over and over gets boring at some point. With that being said though, this game still rocks, and my only real complaint is that I wanted more. It's just a little above average for me, so I'll start it somewhere in the B tier. Now, am I crazy for saying this? Snap is way more enjoyable than Red and Blue. However, I gotta factor other things into it, and man, Snap just does not have any replayability, at least to me. There's more to do in Red and Blue, and you can play it in many different ways, so I'm just gonna keep Snap where it's at on the tier list, for now, at least. Now, when it comes to expanding the world of Pokemon, this is like an almost perfect example of that. Snap doesn't rely on pretty much any of the Pokemon tropes and instead focuses on the whimsy of the Pokemon world. One of the main original appeals of Pokemon was that it was based a little bit more in reality, with Pokemon closely resembling real animals. It was just a lot easier for people to get into, at least in the West. A common critique Pokemon has faced over the years is that they're starting to resemble Digimon a lot more and that it's a negative. Not saying that it's my opinion, but I've heard it a lot. Going on these safaris and capturing Pokemon in their natural habitat is pretty cool. Honestly, it just made the dream of Pokemon being real feel that much more believable, as this is something we do IRL. People also talk about this game a lot, so it's definitely made an impact on the Pokemon IP, so for that, I'm gonna have to raise this game all the way up to an A. I think it could still do better. Maybe I'll come back and change it though. Who knows? I'm just a little pussy who wants to be hesitant on handing out S tiers, especially when I'm only 2 games deep. However, Pokemon was not done dropping bangers. They were cooking some good shit up during this time. Pressure makes diamonds. Perhaps an S tier is still around the corner. So let's continue this legendary run with...
Why? Taken down with one hit!
God, this game fucks. As it turns out, this is actually the first game we've seen today that I had the privilege to grow up playing. And just the music, the sound effects, the commentator's voice, it's all just mwah, 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 mwah. Brings back a lot of good memories. Just like Pokemon Snap, Stadium is a fan favorite and has a lot going for it just within the community. When you think of Pokemon spin-off games, I'd be surprised if this wasn't one of the first games you thought of. So, let's hop into it. What is this game all about? Well, there really isn't much to it. Ultimately, Pokemon Stadium is just a sandbox battler. Think of this game as like a precursor to Pokemon Showdown. There are some objectives in this game, like facing off the gym leaders in Elite Four, as well as the generic Stadium mode, which has multiple cups, all with different rule sets. But once you complete both of those, you can face off against Mewtwo and pretty much beat the game. That's all there is to it. You just put together a team and do endless Pokemon battles. There's no story or dialogue or really anything beyond turn-based battles, which is fine. I mean, that was all fluff anyways. Psh, who needs dialogue? It makes it a whole lot easier to crush my enemies when they have no personality. And the main appeal of this game is the fact that at this point in time, this will probably be the closest we get to a mainline Pokemon game on home consoles. Having Pokemon battles that aren't just static pixels or, I guess, static 3D models nowadays blew people's minds. Add the commentator and it just makes Pokemon battling feel like a real sport and adds so much more to the Pokemon experience. Now, personally, I'm not the biggest fan of Pokemon's battle system. This game kind of reminded me how often I check out when playing a Pokemon game and I'm just like on a route that's 30 trainers in a line. With all the animations and whatnot, each Pokemon battle ends up taking way longer than I'd like, so if you're not into a battle, it can feel like a slog, personally speaking at least. Now, I know what all of you at home are thinking. Teague, you said you have a lot of fond memories of this game, but it seems like you dislike the main gameplay behind it. What gives? Well, let me show you the real star of Pokemon Stadium. It must be Thanksgiving as we're being kicked out of the adult table and over to the Kids Club. Yes! I love mini games that relate to the personality of the IP. Give me more! That's right. The Kids Club. Ultimately, it's just 9 little Pokemon minigames, but man, do I love it. It really makes me wish Nintendo tried the Mario Party format with other IPs, as Pokemon Party could definitely move some units. Each minigame is just so memorable. You got Clefairy Says, that game with the annoying singing and squeaky hammer sound effect, the Sandshrew game, which acts as a button masher minigame, the classic hoop throwing carnival game, which definitely has some ethical issues. I don't know if Ekans enjoys being an Ouroboros for our entertainment, but whatever. You also got games like Sushi Go Around and Snore War, which are fun as hell, but man, if I was a parent and my kids were playing that, I'd be at the bar as drunk people slurring in my ears sounds a lot better than this. I can go on and on about Kids Club. I just love it so much. It makes Stadium stand out so much more. I think it's funny that whenever I played Stadium with friends, we'd pretty much avoid the base games and just play Kids Club. I do wish they expanded it a little bit more, but man, I'm just glad it made it in, as it was definitely added on as a bonus. A tier. Ooh, sorry, I just kind of spilled that out. I won't lie, personally, if the Kids Club was not included, my rating for this game would be much, much lower, and I don't want to dwell on that, so let's just move on. Now, here's the tough question. Is this game better than Red and Blue? Again, Kids Club is really saving its ass here, as I think without it, it's just a dumbed down version of Red and Blue with better visuals, though I think if you never had a handheld console growing up, this game would suffice as an introduction to the series. So with that being said, we're definitely moving this game down closer to the midpoint, and I don't want to dwell on that either, so let's just discuss how much this expanded the world of Pokemon. If we're just looking at this game in a vacuum, I'd say not that much, as it's just essentially Red and Blue, but got everything that makes the game enjoyable, like catching Pokemon or taking down Team Rocket, and then just turning it into a 3D game. But the fact that this game is a sandbox battler, you could argue that this helped make the battle system in Pokemon lean towards being more serious and actually competitive. I do think Stadium paved the way for the modern VGC that we see today, and it really is just a cool game that lots of people love. So for that, I think I'm going to put it back in the A tier, but just slightly behind Snap, as I think it's just as popular while doing more. With another A tier game, Gen 1 is now a more top-heavy generation so far. So, are we going for the three-peat, baby? Come on, this legendary run isn't over yet. We need our graduation, baby! Woo! So yeah, this is more like a Jesus is King situation. I don't even know where to begin, man. See, I actually like card-based video games. I played the shit out of some of these Yu-Gi-Oh games as a kid. Ever played GX Duel Academy? It fucks. Unfortunately for Pokemon TCG, it doesn't just fuck, it fucking sucks. It's just so boring. I don't even want to talk about it. Can we just pretend it doesn't exist? Look, I get it. At the time, the card game was a massive success, just like the animated games, so you gotta capitalize on that. Plus, it makes getting into the card game a lot easier. Would you rather purchase a video game one time or buy a bunch of booster packs and hope that you pull the cards you want for your team before the new set comes out? Actually, knowing how some of you act, the answer would definitely be both. But this game is such a poor replacement for the physical card game that I don't get why anyone would want this. Pokemon TCG doesn't do anything interesting with its gameplay. It's just fundamentally a card version of Red and Blue, which is fine. That's the point. The goal is to beat the 8 Club Masters and 4 Grandmasters in a card duel. Yeah, I wonder how long it'll take before that format breaks me, but for now, it's fine, especially since we're still in Gen 1. So branding is important. Gotta have these kids get that Pokemon format seared into their frontal lobe. Unfortunately for me, during my time playing for this video, I never actually beat a Club Master, let alone faced off against one, because you have to beat their club members first. Adoy. But doing that seems to take as long as a full 40-hour work week, as each game I played, win or lose, would take years off my life. This is due to the fact that this game is just way ahead of its time, and the Game Boy just can't load side menus as quickly as you'd want for a game like this. And let me tell you, there's a lot of menus. You want to see what energies a card needs to do an attack? That'll just take a cool 3 minutes. Need to remind yourself what Pokemon you have on your bench? Go ahead and grab a snack while we're waiting for it to load. How about building a new deck? That seems pretty important, right? After you beat a club member, you get a pack of cards to open, so you can really change around your starter deck to make it as best as you can. You guessed it though, building a deck feels like picking a peanut out of a jar filled with honey and molasses, so you won't catch my ass doing that, which really sucks because my starter deck is ass. Now, it's possible that I'm just ass. Don't worry, that thought came to mind, but man, if I didn't get a perfect starting hand, I'd be waiting 20 minutes before I lose and can try again. The only positive I can give this game is the fact that the music playing during my torture was actually pretty good. If I was forced to listen to a song on loop while getting my ass handed to me virtually, this would be the song, F tier. This game is just not for me. I'm sorry if you like this game, but man, they should have just held off till the GBA came out to release a game like this. Now, how do I compare this game to Red and Blue? It's worse. Way worse, like actually god-awful comparatively. Even the value of the ease of access to getting into the card game is lost, because you can find this game in a bargain bin and a used game store nowadays, while the physical cards it emulates can put a down payment on a nice house. We're just gonna keep it here, the F tier. Now, will its impact on the Pokemon world move it up to D tier? No, because let's be honest, it does jack shit besides promoting the card game. I thought about making a whole joke on how this game actually inspired the physical card game, but then I got to playing it and there's nothing funny about it. You're laughing. I just played an awful card-based video game and you're laughing. Well, not anymore. No jokes from here on out. F tier. Well, F+. And that's only because you're able to use a link cable to battle friends, and this is the first Pokemon game to have a run mechanic, but let's be real, I'm being generous with that. What happened? We were doing so good, but now we're down here messing around in F tier? Come on, I know we could do better. We have one more game to go through this episode, so let's see if Gen 1 could get back into that A tier, or perhaps maybe even an S tier? It's time to play everyone's favorite game.
My Pokémon rule!
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, ain't no way this game is S tier, let alone A. Funny enough, this is actually another game I owned growing up. It's just one of those random games your parents bring home from the thrift store because it was like $5 and it has that Pikachu thing you like so much on the cover. But yeah, this is a weird game to describe, seeing as this is actually a part of another game franchise. Think Puzzles and Dragons Z plus Mario for the 3DS. Actually, that's a perfect example. This is pretty much a precursor to that. Pokemon Puzzle League is a part of the Tetris Attack series, or Panel de Pon, depending on how much pussy you get. This was originally a scrapped game, but Nintendo remembered that at the beginning of my video, I mentioned that they made a spin-off game for the card fans, the mainline fans, and the anime fans as well, so they finished it and slapped Ash on the cover for me, so my script is fulfilled. How generous of them. This game is just Tetris Attack. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm not the best at puzzle games, so watching my gameplay is probably the best way for you to understand how it works, as I'm definitely an amateur at this. I don't really know what the fuck I'm doing. Now, surprise, surprise, this story mode is just beating 8 gym leaders and then the Elite Four. Team Rocket!
That's right.
Okay, get a little experimental. I see you, Nintendo. I get Team Rocket is a pretty popular part of the anime, so their inclusion here isn't surprising. What is surprising is the fact that this is the only time I've seen them in a spin-off game so far. It's not like they weren't an integral part of Red and Blue, but whatever. They were just shitting these games out. Coming up with ways to integrate them was probably too much trouble, and with this game, they just had to slap on a PNG and a couple of MP3s, and they were set. But that's the game. There's not much else to it. There is a couple of other game modes that you would expect to be included with a puzzle game, like Challenge Mode, but the big seller of this game was the 3D mode. And I hate to say it, but my future man brain could not care at all. I get back then, it was all like, 3D what? But nowadays, it's a total snooze fest. Wake me up when they have realistic ball sack wrinkles on Pikachu's model. At the end of the day, this game is kinda lazy, just some awful FMVs and PNGs taken from the anime's Wikipedia page, and all of a sudden this is a Pokemon game, but it's also Tetris Attack, and you can't hate on Tetris Attack. On principle alone, it's B tier. Hey man, I had a blast playing this game. I would definitely play it again sometime. Gotta love those random puzzle games here and there. Now to compare it to Red and Blue, I actually don't have much to say about it from a gameplay standpoint. I prefer Puzzle League. It's just calming and can be more engaging by turning up the difficulty, as well as just being a fun 2-player game, so I'll keep it at B tier. I know, I'm crazy. The next rating for this game actually infuriates me. You have the Pokemon IP. Sure, you're using the anime specifically, but that's just Nintendo throwing me a bone for my script, and also just character designs. The anime is still fundamentally Pokemon. There is not a single reason for this to be a Pokemon game. Not a single one. It's just tacked on to get more units off the shelf, because not a single ounce of creativity was used to change up the Tetris Attack gameplay. When you play against someone, you can change what Pokemon you use, but that doesn't do anything. It just changes what screams happen when you're doing good. They could have tried to add type disadvantage stuff, or maybe make you prioritize matching the leaf blocks when you pick Bulbasaur. Like, maybe if you get enough, he uses Vine Whip or some shit. They really just ignored the idea of special abilities in general. It's actually kind of crazy to me that this was developed internally by Nintendo, because creativity and charm is missing. Actually, let me see. What other games did this team develop? F tier. Make this a chibi robo game next time. Man, if they just added more Pokemon style mechanics, this game could have been a hidden gem. But now it's just an average puzzle game. I was joking about the F tier, by the way. This game just got dragged down to a lower C tier. Nothing crazy, but that makes this list actually pretty well rounded. So with the final game placed on the tier list, it's time for my... This generation of spin-off games truly did have something for everybody. However, that meant there wasn't any real focus on developing these games beyond just polishing the concepts presented. If Pokemon wasn't as explosive in its popularity, maybe they could have taken their time and really made games like Stadium and Snap have a lot more depth to them. But then again, maybe we wouldn't have gotten these games at all if that was the case. At this point in time, Pokemon was definitely underbaked and required a lot more planning and development to execute it a lot better. And I think that's evident with the spin-off games we got during this generation. The success surrounding this era was more on the social impact and less on the actual quality of the games, as people will talk more about the memories Pokemon caused than the actual games themselves. Things like Mew being under that truck, or the Lavender Town horror story, or Porygon seizures are all something people think about way more when discussing Gen 1, whereas Gen 5, people talk more about like the writing and art direction of that era, for example. I'm honestly curious to see how these spin-off games develop throughout the generations, especially as we start getting into the spin-off series territory. But before we do that, we must get through the often forgotten generation of Pokemon, which, yes, is a hint towards the theme of the next episode, which you should subscribe so you know when that comes out, and you can also watch my other videos as you wait. But for now, what tier is Gen 1 based off of its spin-off games? I'd say high C, low B. Looking back, Gen 1 is definitely the starting point of the franchise. I mean, it literally is, but what I'm saying is Gen 1 feels like the start. It's not the example, it's not the kickoff point, it's just there. Its purpose in the grand scheme of things was to introduce Pokemon to the world, and for that, myself and many others are very grateful. It's mid though, like painfully mid, but the formula was there. Now with the success of the franchise helping craft more enthusiasm within Game Freak, the passion to make Pokemon something truly special is just on the horizon. See you guys next time where we will discuss the heart and soul of the Pokemon franchise.